loves, my name is Amber, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to be discussing the Epic Mentor Guide, insider advice for girls eyeing the workforce from 180 boss women who know. As a brief disclaimer, this video is not sponsored in any way. However, I did receive my copy of the book from Books Forward in order to review and feature on my social channels. Since it's a little bit hard to summarize a book of this particular genre, I'm actually going to be sharing my top 5 favorite pieces of advice and questions that are featured within the book. Ali Kriegsman, co-founder and COO of Bulletin, was asked, "How did you battle imposter syndrome while building Bulletin, and what is your advice on this to girls starting out in the work world?" To face my imposter syndrome head on, I started keeping a tally of all the things I had accomplished that once felt so impossible to me. I'd write them down in the notes section of my phone or in a journal. Success is built on baby steps, not a swell of work or lineup of accomplishments that come in all at once. I think logging those baby steps and taking pride in them is very important. This is something that I actually very much agree with and is something that I personally do myself, particularly when it comes to YouTube and different social media things. I'm very frequently left feeling entirely inadequate. However, I have kept an entire PR scrapbook with dozens and dozens of different, handwritten notes and packaging and just kind of like a cute little junk journal of different PR packages that I've gotten to kind of let me know that I actually am somewhat adequate at what I'm doing, enough so that other people have been willing to invest in my content and production as well. And that's something that very much does help the imposter syndrome and feeling like you're really not as good as you've convinced people that you are. Christy Pambianchi, Executive Vice President and Chief People Officer at Intel, was asked, "What are ways new candidates can make profiles stand out when applying for jobs? What catches your eye most when you look at resumes of new graduates?" One commonality that we all share is that everyone faces challenges. What makes us unique is how we handle them and get to the other side. What I look for in a candidate is not the unblemished resume where everything on paper shows a linear path forward. Life is most definitely not linear, and we learn our most potent lessons when trying to navigate uneven terrain or feeling around in the dark to turn on the light. I'm looking for candidates who pivot to stay out front no matter the size or scale of the challenge. If you're a recent graduate, you may not have a lengthy resume, but how did you handle the pressure of a customer service job? What new idea did you suggest at an internship? What barriers did you overcome during this past year when humanity was put to the test? These are questions I ask in interviews, and they are questions that reveal true character. My most profound lessons as a leader came from working in food services in my teens or lifeguarding and teaching swimming lessons. Don't underestimate how learning in any job can apply to a future career. And while it's tempting to portray someone who never trips or stumbles, that's not real life and certainly not the world of work. So show who you are and what you are capable of in moments where you have been tested and flexed your resilience. Share how you dealt with defeat and conflicts because a little grit goes a long way. This is advice that I really loved hearing actually, because it's very, very reassuring to hear from workplace professionals who are the ones who are in charge of hiring and taking other people onto their teams, that they acknowledge that life isn't linear, that your resume is not going to be absolutely perfect in most cases, that most people live and exist in real lives. Hoda Kotb, co-anchor Today and co-host of Today with Hoda and Jenna, was asked, "How did you stay resilient and persistent in the face of obstacles in your life and career, even when people wanted you to change the spelling of your name? And what is one thing you want girls entering the workforce to know about those traits?" The key to being successful in the workplace is to surround yourself only with positive people. I love the quote, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." This is true in the workplace too. Choose wisely. Don't hang around the gossips or the negative people. Find the people who are kind. And do not listen to anyone who says you can't be both nice and successful. It's not true. You can be deeply kind and wildly successful. The other important factor is to never quit. It sounds basic, but there is an open road ahead. So many people will drop out as they cannot handle the long hours, the difficult assignments, and moving from city to city. If you just hang in there, you will find your long runway awaits. So one thing that I really like about this particular piece of advice is the concept that you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. Because that's a concept that I definitely didn't learn for the first time here. That is something that I've heard many times throughout the years. And throughout my experience of growing up, it's genuinely very, very true. Like, you pick up the traits of the people that you are closest with and spend the most time with. And you can drastically notice changes in both your mental health and your personality based on who you are choosing to spend that time with. So, like, I like myself so much better as a person since I've been more selective about who I keep in my inner circle. And at this point in time, I have very, very lovely people who I would not change for the world. So I'm very, very grateful that I've come to that point in time. But I just like want to reiterate the concept that like it is so incredibly true that you are the average of those people that you choose to spend the most time with. And that includes some of your coworkers, you know, not necessarily. It really depends on the job, but how you are at work is very much going to depend on who you surround yourself at work. And sometimes in order to be a better employee and to be better in your chosen career path, you will have to maintain a little bit of distance from some of those people because you can acknowledge that they aren't the type of employees that you want to be. Jean Chatzky, CEO and founder of Her Money Media, former financial editor of The Today Show, and author of Women with Money, was asked, "What are 3 things we should do with our first paychecks to establish smart money habits?" 1. Look at it. It's pretty common to get paid for the first time and think, holy moly, where did all my money go? You've just discovered the difference between your gross income, before taxes, and your net income, after taxes are taken out. The federal and some state governments take some, so does Social Security and Medicare. That's the line called FICA. You'll get it back in healthcare and a pension when you're older. The important thing, you must live on your net income, not your gross income. 2. Save before you spend. When we're talking about money habits, this is the most important of all. Every single time you get paid some money, aim for 15%, more if possible, should come right out of your check and go into savings and investments. If you have a retirement plan at work, this may happen automatically. If not, you want to set it up so that the money moves automatically, out of your checking account and into savings, every time a paycheck gets deposited. Why automatically? So that you don't have to think about it every time. 3. Put those savings to work. Money saved in a bank account is nice. It can help you get through an emergency or pay for a vacation. But money you put into investments, like stocks and mutual funds, can help you build long-lasting wealth. Although you want to have enough cash in the bank to get you through an emergency, a few thousand to start, eventually building to 3 to 6 months worth. Make sure that you are also investing some of those savings. They need to be working for you as hard as you're working for yourself. Now, while this is all pretty solid advice, I do very specifically want to focus on the second point, and that is saving money that you are making. I have found in my own personal adult life that that is like one of the single best ways to try and attempt to create financial stability for yourself, is that you really want to set a specific budget of how much per paycheck that you want to put into savings, so that way you have it for if and when you ever need it. Like, I personally, when I am financially available, I will straight up just put like a solid half of whatever money I make into savings, whereas the other half of stuff that's left over is my like day-to-day life, you know, when I am existing as a human being, you know, that's food, that's any bills that I have to pay, and going out with friends, and then splurging and any necessities that I need. I try and live off of just the half that I keep in my checkings. And I think that that is one of the greatest ways to be able to save money for yourself. Now, obviously, most people are not in the position to be able to split their paychecks in half. Like, I recognize that I'm in an incredibly privileged position to be able to do that. And I'm certainly not in that position all the time by any means. But when I am able to, I like doing that. But I would definitely suggest, like, at the bare minimum, I always grew up hearing 10%. Like, that was always my grandmother's suggestion was like, oh, like put 10% of your paycheck aside and put that into savings or put that towards something specific. And I think that that is such a fantastic piece of advice. Linda Crowe, Community Program Director at IBM, was asked, was there ever a time when a mentor gave you game-changing advice that moved your career in a different or unexpected direction? If yes, were you hesitant about taking the advice? Several years ago, I secured my first executive-level job with my dream company, but it required a cross-country move, which I wasn't eager to do. A mentor enthusiastically encouraged me to accept the role and move. His reasoning was that I wouldn't be in that job forever, and if I didn't like the new town, I could always move back. He said, no one is going to pull up the drawbridge. I went for it. The increase in job title and compensation has been life-changing, and I was able to move back home just a few years later. That is a piece of advice that I honestly have wanted to be able to give people so often, is the concept that, like, nothing is permanent, you know? Many people have the opportunity to be able to take risks because they either have their own financial independence and security to be able to afford risks, or they have a support system that they're able to fall back on if things don't go exactly as expected. But you are allowed to take risks, you know, you are allowed to switch jobs, you are allowed to try new things, you are allowed to try and make changes in your life to try and get closer to your ideal life and career. Now, those were my own personal specific favorite pieces of advice, and quite frankly, I do think that they are some of the best and most beneficial that we do get out of the book. Because, like, if I'm being 100% honest, conceptually, I absolutely love the idea behind this book. I think that it could have been so incredibly important and beneficial to so many people, but I do think in practice it fell a little bit short, simply because a lot of the experts that were asked questions really didn't expand that much on the question and gave very short, superficial, and kind of roundabout answers to the questions that were asked. Not all of them, but I'd be safe to say like a majority of them just felt like they were incomplete or just unthought out answers. And I didn't really see the benefit of this being published in book form based on the information that we were given. Now, I do think, as it is at this point in time, that it would have done so incredibly well as like a social media page and a social media movement. Like if an Instagram page had been, you know, started with this, like they could have done, you know, cute graphics featuring all these different people that they're asking questions of to like gain clout and following for this social media page, to feature the questions and the answers that they're given, because they are very short form and quite frankly feel like they're more social media answers than like they were actual proper like interview type questions or things that should be featured in a full-length book. Like a lot of these experts kind of just didn't really directly answer the questions or danced around them, and it felt very much kind of like a PR Q&A kind of opportunity versus an instance where like these mentors were actually directly asked and had the opportunity to give fully fleshed out answers. And quite frankly, I don't know the exact nature behind these, because the book does mention that like some of these are part of like their mentorship panels and some questions were asked over social media. So they very well may have not had the opportunities to give fully fleshed out answers like they would have had they maybe known that this was for a book specifically, or if they were a little bit more invested in the project. So I don't necessarily want to say that that's the mentor's fault, except in the instances like some of the answers were a little bit like some of them were just straight up self-promotions, honestly. Like instead of fully answering the question, they're kind of like, oh, well, I discussed this in my book. And it's like, hey, that's absolutely fantastic, but I'm reading this book right now. Now, granted, I do think that having this concept in book form could have been absolutely fantastic, even as is. Like, granted, I think that the entire book would have benefited from more expanded answers, but I think it could have done even better had it been published as a series with more specific emphases on the different books following different career fields. Like, we could have had one for STEM, we could have had one for creatives, for so many different particular topics. I think would have been more beneficial, because as it is, we got a lot of information from a lot of people through a lot of different fields, but those questions are very much specifically catered to those fields. And for anybody who's not interested in that particular career or industry, it's really not very beneficial. But as is, it just falls a little bit short of expectations. I absolutely adore the concept, and some of the advice is very, very solid advice, but I do imagine a lot of people who read the book are going to be left a little bit disappointed by some of the specificity of some of the questions and answers. Overall, I do think that it is a good read to have under your belt and something to have perused through, especially for younger women, particularly high school age. Like, this would be a fantastic book to have, especially during the points in high school where, I don't know if this is like a thing all across the board at most high schools, but my personal high school was very college focused for the last, like, junior and senior year. I think this would be an absolutely fantastic book to have on hand, whether it's in teachers' classrooms, whether there's like plenty of copies in the library, if it's recommended. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I had a blast hanging out with y'all. Peace.